When my phone showed 67 missed calls that Tuesday night, I knew they finally understood what I was worth. But let me back up 48 hours to explain how we got there. The rain was pounding the parking lot outside Highland Manufacturing when I sat across from Stephanie Walsh's spotless desk, watching her flip through my promotion application like she was reading yesterday's newspaper. 7 years of 60-hour weeks, missed soccer games with my son, and countless nights fixing problems that nobody else could handle, all condensed into a 25-page portfolio that she barely glanced at before setting it aside. "I appreciate your dedication, Brady," Stephanie said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "But I've reviewed your application thoroughly. While your work has been solid, I don't believe you have the leadership presence for senior management, maybe in another year or two." Solid. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd maintained the highest efficiency ratings in the plant. I personally saved the Bradford Enterprises contract when their custom order specifications got messed up and everyone else wanted to walk away. I hadn't taken a real weekend off in 3 years. But I just smiled and nodded, the same expression I'd perfected after 7 years in corporate manufacturing. "I understand. Thanks for the feedback." "Good. I'm glad we're on the same page," Stephanie replied, already checking her phone. "The Bradford delivery needs your attention today. They've requested modifications before final approval." As I gathered my things, Stephanie was already typing an email, my career disappointment already forgotten. I walked past the corner office that should have been mine, with its view of the production floor and the nameplate where my name belonged. "My name's Brady Hoffman. I'm 48 years old, and until that meeting, I was the most dependable guy at Highland Manufacturing. Not the most visible or the highest paid, but the one who kept everything running while others took credit. I'm practical by nature with a memory for systems that my coworkers call photographic. Growing up in a blue-collar family taught me to fix problems before they exploded, a skill that transferred perfectly to manufacturing operations. When I joined Highland 7 years ago, I'd inherited a complete disaster. The previous operations manager had quit suddenly after a blowout with management, taking all the process knowledge with him. No documentation, no transition notes, not even passwords to critical systems. The production floor was in chaos. Clients were threatening to cancel orders and nobody knew how to prevent it. I spent 4 months reverse engineering every workflow, staying past midnight decoding spreadsheets and rebuilding production schedules. I created detailed guides for every process, color-coded, indexed, and organized so a new hire could understand them. Stephanie never bothered learning these systems. Why would she when I handled everything so smoothly? "You're a natural problem solver," she'd say during performance reviews, always followed by a modest raise that never matched my contributions. The company had recently landed a contract with Bradford Enterprises, a major client worth $3.2 million in annual revenue. I'd built that relationship from scratch, staying late to coordinate with their engineering team and learning their specifications inside and out. Stephanie had attended exactly 4 meetings, mostly to take credit during quarterly executive reviews. Every morning, I arrived at 6:30 to prepare production reports for Stephanie before her 8:30 management meeting. Every evening, I sent comprehensive updates on all active projects. In between, I put out fires before anyone noticed smoke. The morning after my rejected promotion, something changed in me. I arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. Not 6:30, not 7:45, exactly 8 o'clock. I drafted no morning reports. I answered emails directly addressed to me and ignored the rest. When a crisis erupted with a supplier delay, I directed it to the appropriate department instead of solving it myself like usual. By lunch, 3 people had stopped by my workstation with confused expressions. "Brady, did you see the thread about the Bradford scheduling conflict?" asked Lance from logistics. "Yeah," I replied, continuing to review my assigned tasks. He waited for more, shifting uncomfortably when nothing came. "So, can you fix it like you always do?" I looked up from my screen. "That's actually under procurement scope." I forwarded it to Amanda. His eyebrows shot up. "But you always handle these things." "I've been advised to focus more on my assigned responsibilities," I said with a slight smile. "I'm trying to demonstrate that I understand my proper place in the organization." By 5 p.m., I packed up and left. No extra hours, no taking work home. On my drive, I canceled the cabin reservation for my upcoming vacation, the first real break I'd planned in 3 years. Instead, I would be present for the system's inevitable collapse. That evening, my phone buzzed with work notifications. I silenced it and spent time with my son Ryan, who stays with me on weekends. We worked on his car in the garage, something I hadn't had time for in months. "Dad, why are you home early?" Ryan asked, looking up from under the hood of his Civic. I paused, considering how to explain corporate politics to a 16-year-old. "I decided my time was valuable, son, and I wanted to spend more of it with you." He grinned. "Can we finish this engine work tomorrow too?" "Absolutely," I promised, ignoring the phone vibrating insistently in my pocket. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. By the next morning, cracks were showing at work. The Bradford client had requested urgent changes to their production timeline, changes only I understood how to implement. Stephanie attempted to lead the response team but quickly became overwhelmed without my usual detailed briefings. "Where are the process notes for the Bradford customizations?" she demanded, appearing at my workstation at 9:30. "They're in the shared drive," I replied pleasantly. "Under production implementations. I mentioned it in last month's department meeting. There are hundreds of files there. Which one specifically?" I pulled up the folder on my screen. The master document is called Bradford Enterprise Custom Production, Complete Process Documentation. It's organized by production phase with tabbed sections. Stephanie stared at the 180-page document with barely concealed horror. "Can you just handle this directly? The client is waiting." "I'd be happy to," I replied. "But I have the quarterly safety compliance review this afternoon. I can get to Bradford first thing tomorrow morning." Her face tightened. "This can't wait until tomorrow." "I understand. Would you like me to reschedule the compliance review? It's due to the state regulators by end of day." She left without answering, her heels clicking aggressively down the hallway. By noon, word was spreading through the plant that something was wrong. The production line supervisors were looking confused, checking schedules that didn't align with reality. Amanda from procurement appeared at my desk, looking frazzled. "Brady, the Morton Steel delivery is showing Thursday on the system, but they're saying Monday, which is right?" I glanced at my screen. "According to the master schedule, it's Thursday, but you'll want to check with the Bradford timeline adjustments that went out this morning." "What adjustments?" "The ones Stephanie authorized. They should be in your inbox." Amanda's expression told me everything I needed to know. Stephanie had made changes without updating the integrated systems, creating a cascade of scheduling conflicts that would take days to untangle. That evening, I turned off all work notifications and took Ryan to grab dinner. My personal phone stayed silent in my truck as I listened to him talk about his plans for college. For the first time in years, I was completely present in my personal life. "You seem different, Dad," Ryan said, working on his burger. "More relaxed." "I made some changes at work," I told him. "Started focusing on what actually matters." "Good," he said simply. "You were getting pretty stressed out." When we got home, I checked my work phone once. 67 missed calls from various work numbers. Voicemails ranged from confused to desperate to angry. The Bradford team was threatening to pull their contract. 3 production systems had developed unexpected issues, all documented in my guides which nobody had bothered to read. The quarterly compliance report due to state regulators was still incomplete. I set the phone down and slept better than I had in years. Wednesday morning arrived with an emergency. I could feel the tension the moment I walked through the plant doors at exactly 8 o'clock. The overnight supervisor, Carl, intercepted me before I reached my workstation. "Thank God you're here," he said, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "The Bradford line shut down at 3 a.m. Some kind of calibration error. Nobody knows how to fix it." I nodded sympathetically. "That's in Section 7 of the Bradford Process Guide. Has anyone checked that?" Carl's expression was answer enough. "Can you take a look?" "I'll add it to my task list," I replied. "Right after I handle the Morton delivery coordination and the safety compliance follow-up. But Brady, this is costing us thousands per hour." "I understand the urgency," I said, settling at my workstation. "But I've been advised to prioritize my assigned responsibilities. The calibration procedure is clearly documented if someone wants to follow it." The plant atmosphere had transformed overnight. Stressed colleagues rushed between meeting rooms. Stephanie was visible through her office glass, gesturing frantically on a video call. The regional director's assistant was pacing by the main entrance. Lance appeared beside me with wild eyes. "Where have you been? Everything's falling apart. Stephanie's been trying to reach you since yesterday afternoon." "I left at 5 o'clock, I replied calmly. My work hours are 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock as specified in my employment contract. But the Bradford crisis, what about it? His mouth opened and closed. They're threatening to walk. Nobody can figure out how to implement the changes they need. I nodded thoughtfully. That process requires specialized handling. It's all documented in the guide I created last year. Nobody can make sense of your documentation without you explaining it, he almost shouted. Interesting, I said. The day shift supervisors never had trouble with it. Maybe it needs someone with production floor experience to understand the technical details. Before Lance could respond, Stephanie's assistant appeared. Brady, emergency meeting in the conference room, now. I gathered a notebook and pen, walking unhurriedly to the conference room where Stephanie sat with the regional director, Scott Reynolds. Their faces were grim, folders spread across the table. Brady, Scott said, relief evident in his voice. Thank God. We need your help with this Bradford situation immediately. I sat down and placed my notebook on the table. Of course. How can I assist? Stephanie's face was tight with controlled fury. Let's cut to the chase. What will it take for you to fix this? The senior operations position? It's yours. I tilted my head slightly. That's a generous offer, but I've been contacted by Intel Solutions. They've offered me a director position with a substantial salary increase. Apparently they believe I'm qualified for senior management. The room went silent. Scott's eyes widened while Stephanie's narrowed dangerously. You're leaving? Scott asked. When? I haven't accepted their offer yet, I replied. I was taking time to consider my options. The power had shifted, and everyone in the room knew it. Name your price, Scott said immediately. Whatever they're offering, we'll match it. I smiled politely. It's not just about compensation. It's about recognition, respect, and the opportunity to implement the improvements I've developed instead of just maintaining someone else's status quo. The Bradford client specifically asked for you by name, Stephanie interjected. You can't possibly leave now. Interesting, I said. So did 3 others this past month. I reached into my folder and placed a document on the table. Here's my 2 weeks' notice. I'll help with the transition as my contract requires. Stephanie reached for the folder, but Scott was faster. He opened it, scanned the contents, then closed it decisively. This won't be necessary, he said firmly. Brady, I'd like to speak with you privately in my office. As I stood to follow him, Stephanie remained seated, her knuckles white against the polished table. The panic in her eyes told me she finally understood what my departure would mean for her department. I followed Scott to his corner office, aware of the curious glances from colleagues as we passed. His space was functional but impressive. Industry awards lined one wall, while large windows overlooked the entire production floor where workers were scrambling to resolve the Bradford crisis. He gestured for me to sit in the chair across from his desk. I've been watching your contributions for some time, Scott said, folding his hands, though apparently not closely enough. The situation with Stephanie concerns me. This is the first I'm hearing about your promotion being denied. Why didn't you come to me directly? Chain of command, I replied simply. Stephanie is my supervisor. Going over her head would have been inappropriate. He nodded slowly. Admirable, but perhaps misguided in this case. Tell me honestly, what would it take to keep you here? I considered my words carefully. Recognition of my actual contributions, appropriate compensation, and a position where I can implement the efficiency improvements I've developed instead of just executing someone else's vision. Scott studied me for a long moment. I'm creating a new position, Senior Director of Manufacturing Operations, reporting directly to me. 40% salary increase, 3 days remote flexibility per week, and full authority over production workflow design. The position is yours if you want it. I didn't respond immediately, which seemed to surprise him. Is that not sufficient? He asked. It's very generous, I acknowledged, but I need to be clear about something. I'm not using Intel's offer as leverage. There really is another company waiting for my decision. Scott leaned back. What can they offer that we can't match or exceed? A fresh start, I said honestly. No history of being overlooked. No colleagues who see me as support staff rather than leadership material. Fair point, he conceded. But consider this. You've built systems here that you understand completely. You've developed client relationships that trust you specifically. Starting over means rebuilding all of that from scratch. He was right, of course. 7 years of institutional knowledge wasn't easily replaced. But neither was the feeling of being consistently undervalued. I'll need some time to consider, I said finally. Of course. Take the weekend, but I need an answer by Monday morning. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. And Brady, I'd appreciate if you could help stabilize the Bradford situation before you make any final decisions. I nodded. I'll handle Bradford personally today. When I returned to my workstation, an email from Scott was already waiting, outlining the new position offer in writing. The salary figure made me look twice. It was more than I'd made in my best year ever. The job description could have been written specifically for my experience. I was gathering materials for the Bradford call when Stephanie appeared beside my desk, her expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Not here. Lunch. I have the Bradford call at noon," I replied. "After that, then. My office at 2 o'clock. I nodded, already turning my attention to the crisis at hand. The Bradford team was frustrated but relieved when I joined the call. Their project director didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Brady, thank God. We've been trying to reach someone who understands our specifications since yesterday. What's happening over there?" "System integration issues," I explained. "We've had some personnel changes that created communication gaps. Let me walk you through the solutions." Their demands were reasonable. They needed customizations that would normally take weeks implemented within days. I walked them through a phased approach that would prioritize their most critical needs while building toward their complete specifications. "This is exactly why we wanted to work with Highland," their project director said. "You understand our operational needs, not just technical requirements. Can you personally oversee the implementation?" "I'll make sure it gets the attention it deserves," I replied, choosing my words carefully. After the call, I documented the solution in clear steps and sent it to the production team with explicit instructions. Normally, I would have handled every aspect myself, but today I delegated appropriately, making myself available for questions but not taking ownership of the execution. At 2 o'clock, I knocked on Stephanie's door. She looked different, smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "Close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I understand Scott offered you a new position." "He did," I confirmed. She nodded slowly. "I won't pretend to be happy about it, but I understand why he did it. You're valuable to the company." I waited, sensing there was more. "I owe you an apology," she continued, the words seemingly difficult for her. "I've relied on your competence without appropriately acknowledging it or rewarding it. For the first time in 7 years, Stephanie Walsh was being completely honest with me. "May I ask you something?" I said, genuinely curious. "When you said I wasn't ready for senior management, what specifically did you think I was lacking?" Stephanie shifted uncomfortably. "You've always been more technical, the behind-the-scenes problem solver. Senior management requires visibility, presence, political awareness. In other words, I do the work while others take the spotlight." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's oversimplifying." "Is it?" I asked. "The Bradford contract. Who presented the winning strategy to the executive team?" "I did, but based on the approach you developed. The efficiency initiative last quarter that saved the company $400,000. Who received the recognition? That was a team effort. A team I led, coordinated, and created all documentation for." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm not lacking qualifications, Stephanie. I've simply allowed others to stand on my shoulders while remaining invisible." The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. "Are you taking Scott's offer?" she finally asked. "I haven't decided. If you stay," she said carefully, "things will be different between us." "Yes," I agreed. "They will." The weekend gave me time to think clearly, away from office politics. I took Ryan to a car show on Saturday, something I'd been promising for months but never found time for. As we walked between vintage muscle cars, he seemed to sense something was different. "You're thinking about something big, aren't you, Dad?" he asked, stopping to admire a restored Camaro. "Yeah, I am. How'd you know?" "You get this look when you're working through a problem. Same look you had when you were figuring out my transmission issue." I smiled. "Work stuff. But it's going to affect both of us." "Good change or bad change?" "Good, I think. But it means some things will be different." On Sunday, I called my brother for advice. "What does your gut tell you?" he asked after I explained the situation. "That I've outgrown the box they put me in," I replied. "But I'm not sure if Scott's offer changes that or just makes the box more comfortable." Would you be reporting to Stephanie in this new role? No, directly to Scott. And what happens to Stephanie? It was a good question. Scott didn't say specifically, but reading between the lines, I think her authority was being reconsidered. So your options are to take a fresh start elsewhere or accept a promotion that might result in your former boss being restructured out? Put that way, the choice felt different. I didn't want revenge against Stephanie. I just wanted recognition for my work. Are you sure about that? My brother challenged. Because from what you've told me, part of you would enjoy seeing her face the consequences of underestimating you. His words hit uncomfortably close to home. Was that what I wanted? To see Stephanie humbled? To watch her realize how much she depended on me while simultaneously dismissing my contributions? By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I arrived early, 6:30, my old starting time, and went directly to Scott's office. His assistant wasn't at her desk yet, but his door was open. "You're early," he noted, looking up from his computer. "I wanted to give you my answer before the day gets busy," I explained, taking the seat across from him. "I'm accepting your offer with 2 conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm listening. First, I want to build my own team, full hiring authority for 3 positions that I believe are essential." Scott nodded. "Reasonable. And the second? Stephanie remains in her current position." This clearly surprised him. "After how she treated you? Why?" "Because replacing her doesn't solve the structural problems in how departments function, and because I don't want my first leadership act to be perceived as revenge." He studied me with new interest. "That's unexpected and strategically smart. I've learned a few things watching from the sidelines," I replied. "Very well. Stephanie stays, though her department will now coordinate through your office for operational matters." "Thank you." "No, Brady," Scott said, extending his hand. "Thank you for staying." The announcement went out at 10 o'clock a.m. that morning. My inbox immediately flooded with congratulations, questions, and meeting requests. Lance stopped by my desk, looking somewhat sheepish. "So, you'll be my boss now?" "Technically, yes," I confirmed. "Is that going to be a problem?" He shook his head quickly. "No, it's great. You've always been the one who actually knows what's happening anyway." Throughout the day, colleagues who had barely acknowledged me previously suddenly found reasons to introduce themselves. The production floor supervisors, guys who'd always respected my technical knowledge, were grinning when they saw me. "About time," Carl said, shaking my hand. "Now maybe we'll get some common sense in management." Stephanie avoided me until late afternoon when she appeared at my desk with a folder. "The quarterly strategy document," she said stiffly. "Since operational planning now falls under your purview, you'll need to present this at the executive meeting tomorrow." I accepted the folder. "Thank you. I'll review it tonight." She turned to leave, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, I didn't recommend against your promotion because I thought you were incapable. I did it because I couldn't afford to lose you from my team." It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. "That's the fundamental problem, isn't it?" I replied. "Good managers develop their people, even when it means letting them move on." She nodded once sharply and walked away. That evening, I called Ryan with the news. "So does this mean you'll be home more?" he asked. "Actually, yes," I replied. "Good management means building systems that work without constant intervention." "Cool. And Dad?" "I'm proud of you." 6 months later, my new systems had reduced production delays by 35% while increasing output quality metrics across all product lines. The Bradford contract had expanded to include 2 additional service lines. Ryan was proud when friends asked what his dad did for work. Sometimes the most powerful response to being undervalued isn't proving others wrong. It's demonstrating your worth so clearly that denying it becomes impossible. Your value isn't determined by others' inability to see it. It's defined by your impact, whether acknowledged or not.